Welcome to this crash course in basics of Power Query. To tell you the truth, this tool is available both in Excel as well as Power BI, and for people who are not aware of this tool or do not know the use cases, this slightly longish video will allow you to understand over 20 different parts of Power Query in a single video. So let's begin. Let's see what the agenda is. We wish to use Power Query to automate a certain data transformation. For example, we have in the first column region names. There are few blank rows and possibly there could be duplicate entries as well. And this data must be transformed into this format. Now I know it looks confusing. So what I've done is I have given a comparison of input versus output. Now think about it. If you were to transform this data set into a format which looks like this, you would probably have to do a lot of copy pasting job to get this Jan, Feb, March out in a vertical format. And once that is there, then you can possibly combine that with the regions. Now that's not it. You'll have to multiply the sales value with the discount so that you can get the discount amount. And based on the discount amount, you may want to classify them as low, medium, or high. Now imagine all these steps taken in Excel, you got your job done. What if I add more entries in the future? Will that be automated, or would you have to do the same steps again? Think about it. So that's why we wish to use Power Query, and the advantage is if you watch this full video, you can not only apply these techniques in Excel, but also can apply the same in Power BI. So in Power BI desktop, the tab which says transform data is effectively Power Query editor. Same thing that you see under Excel's data tab called launch Power Query editor. So I would want you to pause this video at this point and just compare what is the kind of data transformation we are looking at. And this is just one part. I may also want to create a table which tells me that, hey, in the northern region, low level of discount, how many times has it appeared? So maybe 3 times. And what is the total of the discount that I need? So it's kind of a mini pivot table, and I want all of this automated inside Excel or using the same technique inside Power BI. So that's the agenda. Let's see if we can start and watch this video right till the end to gain some really good understanding as a basic user of Power Query. Now I've written the agenda points here and I'll cover them one by one. In case you're not able to watch this video in full, you can bookmark this video so that you can come back and watch this in full with ease and convenience. Right now, let me open a blank Excel file. The first thing I would like to do is to go to Data tab, go to Get Data, and just pause for a few seconds to see what contains inside this button drop-down menu. So this tells you that, hey, you can establish connection with various sources of the data. And if you want to skip all this process parts and directly go to Power Query Editor, you can click on this button. Right now, I wish to keep it simple, so I go to From File, and I'm clicking on this option which says From Excel Workbook. I click there. It will invariably ask me the path. So I'm going to copy and paste this path and press enter. And what I get is access to that specific file which I was showing you as a demonstration. So I go to intro exercise and I click on import. Next, it will give me a preview of the worksheets that are present in that particular file. So I go to the one which says input. Now, when you do this on your computer, either through Power BI or Excel, you might see some extra blank rows at the bottom in the form of null. Or you may see extra blank columns on the right hand side indicating null. Do not worry, once we get to the Power Query Editor, we will see how to treat that. Right now, I keep this sheet input selected. And I will go to transform data. Now remember, this is the term used for Power Query Editor. So I click on that and very soon a window will open up which will mention Power Query Editor. Now I totally understand a lot of you would be looking at this window for the first time in your lifetime. So I'm going to take a step back and help you navigate what is the interface looking like. So for example, the first thing I notice is this is Power Query Editor. Okay. Next, I notice that there is a section called Queries. In the middle, there is this data set which I was trying to establish connection with. Next, there is a section called Query Settings. We'll come to that. And apart from that, I also see a small formula bar which looks like some kind of a coding. So let's try to understand these parts one by one. First, let's talk about queries. So if you want to import any data connection here, I would right click and say new query, and you will see there are a lot of data sources which I can access. Now this is exactly the same as get data that you saw a minute back. So one can directly come to Power Query Editor window, right click on this query section and start getting the data from various sources. Now, when you do that, each action is recorded as a series of steps on the right hand side. Each step is represented by a line of command which we refer as mQuery. Now when you try this on your PC for the first time, you may not see this formula bar. So you can go to View tab and activate the formula bar. Sometimes even the query settings panel is disabled or deactivated. You can click on the query settings on the left hand side to bring it back. Now suppose you are in the fourth step, the outcome of which is this data. And let's say you delete one of the columns on the right hand side by saying right click, remove. Notice that action will be recorded as a step, and that step will be represented by a line of command which is what we refer as mQuery command. And if you wish to undo this last step, you can click on this cross button, it will be gone and your data will be restored as the previous step. Isn't that fascinating? Now think about this. If you are able to build a series of steps which helps you transform your data, next time all you have to do is go to Home tab and say refresh all. What this means is all these steps that you have recorded will be run in the same sequence, effectively automating your entire process of transformation of data. We'll see that as we move along. Right now, let's see what we have on our screens and what transformation do we need to do. First things first, when you try this on your computer, you may see a lot of null columns. So I may choose the first column, press Shift key, choose the fifth column, and then right click upon that to say remove other columns. Now don't you worry, these settings that you get on right clicking are also available under Transform tab or sometimes Home tab. So for example, when I go to Home tab, I also see something called Remove Duplicate Blank Rows. Adjoining to that, I also see something called Keep Top Rows, Bottom Rows. So depending on rows or columns, you can choose to see what options you want to opt for. So whether you click remove other columns from this section or when you right click or remove other columns from this panel, it's the same. So I say remove other columns. So there is a step which gets added which says, hey, let's only keep these column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and remove anything else that comes there. Similarly, if you wish to remove the first row, let's say, you can go to Home tab and say, let's remove the first row, one row. Remove top rows and then you can mention how many rows, one row. There you go. Okay. So that step ensured that one row was deleted. Maybe I don't want that step. What do? I cross this button, it indicates undo. Now, from here you may wish to tell me that, hey, I have a lot of null rows, which means there is no data in that particular row. I want to get rid of them. So I will go to Home tab, remove rows, and I'll say remove blank rows. There you go. So a step got added and all the blank rows that were there, pure blank rows, that means not a single value exists in that particular row, will be removed. Next, what I observe is the headings not in their correct positions. So under Transform tab, there is a button which says use the first row as headers. And if I do that, notice two steps got added in the query settings. The first one which says let's promote the first row to become the header. And because the header has been pushed to its correct position, the underlying data, which are all numeric, are being reassigned the data type, that is whole number, or in some cases it could also be decimal number. So on the top left corner of your column heading, there lies a button which decides the data type, and this is a very, very critical portion of Power Query. Why? Just in case if the data type was not correct and it was text, you will not be able to use the values in this column in Power BI desktop for calculations. They will be number stored as text. So be very much aware of the data types that you're working with while working in Power Query. Next, now at this point, if you feel overwhelmed, feel free to pause the video, watch it again. I did not learn all of this in a single day, and I don't expect you to do that, but I will simplify those steps for you so that it's easy for you to pick up in lesser time. In fact, if you look back, what have we covered? We have covered how the data must be transformed, the input versus the output. You got the data, you can go to get data, or you can right click on this query section and say, hey, I wish to get the data from an Excel file. So that's the get data. We spoke about general user interface of Power Query, that is how do you activate the view formula bar or query settings, and you can use the query settings window to undo some of your last steps. So there is no Control Z. Next, we saw that you can right click and say remove other columns and retain the columns which you would want. If you want to be specific on removing first two rows or first one row, you can use the remove row. Then we saw promote headers, and we saw along with this that there is a button which allows you to check the data type or even edit that. Where is it? It's on the left hand side panel of the column header. We also saw that you can remove blank rows. So now let's see what else can be done to transform this data. Now, there is a possibility that North region may appear twice or maybe 5 times. But do I want to remove all of them? No. I wish to remove only those ones which are pure duplicates, where the values are matching 100, 100, 70, 70, 0.05 and 0.05. Now, why am I specifying this? Because sometimes I see people, they accidentally keep their cursor in one of the values and then they go to Home tab to initiate remove duplicates. Now be aware, if you do this right now, all the other values will be gone because everything is 70. See? That's wrong. So I undo my last step, and next time if you wish to do the same, please choose all the columns, then go to Home tab and click on the same button of remove duplicates. There you go. So I hope you remember that next time when you want to remove duplicates, choose all the columns. Next, I want to transform this Jan, Feb and March in a vertical format. In other words, I wish to convert these horizontal data into a vertical format such that it can be paired with North 3 times, North Jan, North Feb, North March. And along with that, I should get line by line data of 80, 100 and 70. To do so, we will be using a technique called Unpivot columns. So I choose Jan, Feb and March by pressing Shift. Next, either I can go to transform and look for a button called Unpivot columns, or I can right click and say Unpivot columns. That means from the current header position, please dislocate or unpivot those columns so that it becomes vertical, and see the transformation. Now I have North 3 times because they must be paired individually with Jan, Feb and March. If you want to see the transformation, you can simply choose the previous step, come back to the current step, and you will realize that this is the transformation it was able to make. Now, I may move the column physically by choosing the column header and move here. I can double click and change the name of the column to, let's say, month. Enter. So now I have a decent data set wherein I have region, month, I can have value, or I can rename this as sales value for your convenience, sales value, and followed by the discount percentage. Now I'll be very careful about the data type. If I am expecting a column with number for subsequent calculations, I would keep it in a numeric data format. So just to recap, what else did we cover? You have seen that while removing duplicates, it's important to choose multiple column. You have seen the basics of the unpivot column, and if you ask me, this requires a bit of practice to get a full hands-on as to when it should be used. But trust me, it will be heavily used when you learn about merge queries in Power Query. Then you have seen a simple method how to rename column headers. Now we move to a step where I need to combine these two columns value into a single column. Now there are two simple easy methods and I'm going to show you both. First, I press Ctrl to choose both the columns. Then I right click and I use a technique called merge columns. Clicked. Now it asks me if you want to merge them together, what is the common delimiter or a separator that you would want to keep? So let's say I'll keep a comma just for example's sake. And this I will say, hey, this is the merge column. You can give a different name, new column. Okay. Now notice a query has been written for you which combines the values of both the columns in a single column. So this is like concatenate as what you do in Excel. Now you may ask me, hey, instead of comma, can I put underscore or maybe hyphen? Well, easy. You can go to the query settings option, look at the applied steps. You'll see a small settings icon. You click on that. As you do so, you'll get the same panel which allows you to change this to anything else. Let's say custom. And it could be hyphen, and I'll click on OK. So it replaces that step with that modified delimiter. Now this is one way. So to show you the other way, I will first remove the last step. Easy. Now I wish to show you something really important, which is almost equivalent to flash fill in Excel. So I go to add column and there is a button called column from examples. So since I have chosen these two columns, I can say, please take a sample from me from these two selected columns. Now, is it compulsory to choose from selection? No. Why? Because even if you choose from all columns, in the next subsequent steps, you can tell Power Query that, look, these two columns are not for my current sample. These are for number calculations. What I'm concerned with right now is to show a sample based on these two columns. So I give something here, north in capital, -JAN. So in a way, I'm giving a certain series of samples. Now, in a more complex scenario, you might want to give more than 2 or maybe 3 samples to give a good idea to Power Query Editor what exactly do you want. And based on that, it will create one line of command which will get the answer that you're looking for. So if I'm happy with the answer, great. I'll say OK and see. There you go. So column from example is a very nice way, easy way to show a sample and then expect a certain answer in the window and get your job done without writing a single line of command. So I prefer column from example anytime that I can use because it allows me more flexibility, not just to merge data, but also to convert the data in uppercase or extract data from date. So please understand this is a very important technique, not just for merging data, but also for extracting data or date components from a column. So I may just refer this column in the third position. Just to quickly give you one more example, I'm going to column from example once again. And I'm choosing only that column from where I want to extract some data customized to my requirement. And here I type in NO, just the first 2 letters, -JA, enter. I'll give 2 more examples, NO-FE, enter. Now notice it is able to populate that pattern for everybody else. And if you're happy with this pattern, you can click on OK and you will get a revised column with that data. So without writing a single line of command, you can create some really fascinating data extraction output. For now, I'll remove my last step. That's not what I wanted. This was just for sample. Now, when I look at region, I look at month, I look at the merged column. Those are all 3 text-based data. The other 2 columns are in a numeric format, now which I want to multiply. Now again, just like the previous example, you may have more than one technique. For example, you can choose both the column, right click and go to product. This is something similar to merge columns. However, if you want more power, more customization, you will have to go to add column, go to custom column. Now custom column is a very powerful feature in Power Query Editor. It allows you to write numerous formulas in combination so that you can get something very powerful outcome. Now just to give you an example, if I just type in the letter A, you will realize how many different types of formula are present which you may want to use in the future sometime. So in short, if you ever Google for ready-made formulas, please write Power Query custom column formula to, let's say, write nested if statements or to create a date range list. So the 5 important keywords are Power Query custom column formula to do something. Right now, I will simply write here discount amount as the new column which I wish to generate. Next, I will choose the sales value, which I'll double click. Then I'll put a multiplication sign followed by double clicking the discount percentage column value. So double click. So it creates a very simple product or multiplication. And once I create OK, I will get the desired outcome. Please note, if you want to go back to the same window and change the calculation, you can go to query settings, click on this small icon or right click and say edit settings. You will be given that panel again in which you can make some modifications. Yeah, so once this is done, I look at the column. Everything looks great except one thing, which is this data type. So you have to ensure that if this is used properly in Power BI desktop or in Excel, the data type must be that of a numeric data type. So I take that effort to click on ABC123 and make it 1.2, or in other words, the decimal number. So from now, if you export this data to Excel or if you're working in Power BI, these column values can be used for your calculation, sum, max, min, average, otherwise not. So very important tip, do note, be aware of all the times where you are changing the column calculations. The data types are important. So let's take a quick recap. What have we covered? So we have seen that you can use merge column by choosing 2 or more column, but you can also use column from examples, which I found more powerful and versatile. You've also seen that you can add a column which can have many complex calculation. You can also get ready-made codes. All you have to write is Power Query. Sorry for the spelling. Power Query custom column formula to, and then you mention what do you want to achieve. If you do that in Google, very likely you are going to get some ready-made codes on the internet which you can copy and paste or edit and reuse. So these are the couple of techniques we have learned in Power Query so far. So as you would have realized that this video, single video, is allowing you to understand the different techniques of Power Query as a beginner. Please bookmark this so that you can come back and refresh this knowledge. Right now, let me go back to the data and see what else needs to be done. Now, based on the discount amount, I want to create a nested if statement. If the amount is, let's say, less than 10, I want low. If it is less than 30, I want medium, and so on, so forth. To do that, you can either write a custom column formula in this window, or better, use this button called conditional column under add column tab. If I go to conditional column, this means you can write a nested if statement. Let me show you how. So new column name, what do you want? I want status of the discount in terms of LMH, that is low, medium, high. If the discount amount column name is less than or equal to, let's say, 15, and this obviously can be changed later, then the outcome I want is low. Once all the values till 15 have been evaluated, then you can add a clause and say, hey, if the discount amount is less than or equal to, let's say, 25, then give me medium. For everything else, please give me a value high. So take a note, this is like a nested if statements where you can choose a column value, put the operator sign, and put a hard-coded number. If you do not wish to put a hard-coded number and wish to compare with existing columns, you may want to click on this drop-down and choose that column. It's very much possible that you've already made some calculations of discount and you want to compare whether that discount that you have calculated already is in alignment with the one that you're about to calculate. So in that case, you can choose select a column. So I'll click on OK, and I suddenly get low, medium, high classified appropriately as per the logic. You can go to query settings, click on this icon, and once this is done, you can again go back and edit the existing conditions. Although it's a text value column, so no need to specifically make into ABC, but as a good habit, why not do it right away? So I've now got the columns of north, that is region, month-wise, merged column, sales value, discount, discount amount, and the classification low, medium, high. So just to recap, what have we covered? We have done conditional column for nested if, dividing the data points into low, medium, high. Now please be with me because I know it's a long video, but you have to understand that in a single video, I'm sharing the crux of Power Query steps so that when you go back, your ability to think your solutions in terms of steps are way, way higher than what it was 15 minutes back. Now, what I wish to do, I wish to get the data as a classification, that is north, how many low items are there? Okay. So in other words, I wish to do something like summarizing the data, or in other words, a mini pivot table. So what I do is I right click on this query and I say, let's duplicate the query. Duplicate the query means whatever steps you have done right from the start till the end, same will be duplicated as another query. In other words, both the queries are independent of each other. However, if you right click and say reference point, what happens is the source of this reference is the previous query called input, which means if you make any changes into the input, that will affect this input number 3. Now I don't need that, so I'll delete this for now. And I'll simply have this second input, which is nothing but a duplicate query. I'll right click to rename this. And I'll say this is nothing but a group by or a summary. Now, from here, I go to transform and I click on the button group by. In the group by, there are two buttons, basic and advanced. I always prefer to use advanced because advanced gives me more options, and whatever I want to do under basic can be done with the advanced button. So why not? So here, let me keep it simple as of now. I'm just keeping region as a grouping, which means I want the headings north, east, west, and south. And I simply want to count how many times do they appear. Okay. So you see, north is appearing 3 times, east is appearing 3 times, and same for everybody else. Now, what if I want to add some layers or different calculations? I go to query settings, click on this settings icon, and now let's see what else I can do with this. So I go to advanced, I add a grouping, and in that grouping, I'm mentioning the LMH or low, medium, high. So now ideally, if your data was huge enough, you will be getting north low, north medium, north high, 3 combinations. And within each of them, I not only want count, but I would also want the sum of the discount amount. So here you have to change the operation from count to sum and decide which column do you want to add the values from. So I'm going to add the values from discount amount. This is where a lot of people make a mistake. They choose a different column. So I'm choosing discount amount. So this is called aggregation, the calculations that you're trying to do, and the clusters in which you are trying to divide, region and status, that is called grouping. Let's see what happens if I click on OK. There you go. For north, low, there were 3 items, and that's the total of the discount. Since there is no north medium or north high in the small data, you would not get that entry, but you definitely get that in west. See, medium, high, low, 1 entry each, and that's the total of discount amount. So you got 2 different outcomes. One is the raw input, which is the line by line transformation, and the other is group by, which is a summary. And to tell you the truth, if I go back to my original data set and make the changes or update anything, let's see what happens. But before that, let me show you how to get this data to Excel. So I go to File and I will choose Close and Load To. Why? Because it gives me the option. Do you want to simply create a connection? That means let Power Query do its job, but do not give me the data in Excel format yet. Or I want to convert into table. I'll show the implication of both. Right now, let's say I say only create connection. Okay. So what happens is Power Query has been exited from. You're not getting any outcome in Excel. But later you may want to say, hey, look, I want the outcome in an Excel format. So I can go back, right click on this queries and connections. By the way, how do you get this? Well, queries and connections are under data tab where you can click on queries and connection and bring this. It'll give you all the Power Query line items which you have recorded. So I right click and say, hey, let's load to and say table. And if you wish to specify the destination, you can. But if I click on OK, it loads the data into the Excel. So you may have the option of not loading the data if you use load to. For large data sets, which goes beyond 1 million rows, you can directly convert into a pivot table as well. This is also a very useful feature. But right now, I wish to go back and show you that if I make changes in the input sheet, let's say I'm adding an entry called Northwest, I'm copying the same values, maybe change one of them to 100% and save the file. So now after saving, if I go back to the other file where I have got these Power Queries built, I'm going to right click on this part and say refresh. So notice I have got this Northwest added with 1 representing 100% discount, and that's obviously a very high level of discount. So in the last few minutes, you realized that I could duplicate a query. I could use group by feature to summarize my data, something very similar to pivot table. I can load that as a table inside my Excel, go to queries and connections. From there, I can decide to further choose from the load to option whether to load as a table or a Power Query connection or simply pivot table. I could also potentially refresh after making changes in the original file and saving those changes. And if you wish to go back to Power Query Editor to add 1 or 2 more commands, you can right click on the query and say edit. Or alternatively, you can go to data tab and launch the Power Query Editor. So that's that. Imagine so many things can be done just with the help of Excel's Power Query. And now for the grand finale. All that you have learned here can also be applied equally well inside Power BI. And let me give an example. I go to the Excel file, I right click on the input query and I go to edit. My intention is to find out the entire series of commands which are responsible for such a data. And where is that? You can get inside View tab, you can go then towards Advanced Editor. Now here you'll see the mQuery command responsible for bringing in the data in the current format. I'll copy the entire list of commands, Control C. I'll close this window. Next, I go to Power BI Desktop. And as we remember from the initial 2 minutes of discussion that inside Power BI Desktop, Transform Data is the button to access Power Query Editor. I click on that. Technically, I don't have any queries right now. It's simply blank. So I need a container where I can paste that code and get my job done. So I right click on this area, new query, and I choose blank query. Now it's going to be a blank query, which means there is no command associated with it. So I go to View tab, Advanced Editor. I must remind you that this is the Power Query Editor inside the Power BI Desktop. So I'm going to just simply delete the existing line of commands and paste the one which I copied from the Excel's Power Query Editor. I click on Done. And notice all these steps get added, giving you the outcome which you had initially received inside Excel. And the outcome is that you can now say close and apply, which means close the Power Query Editor window and apply all the changes so that those outcomes, the columns can be given to Power BI Desktop, which can then be used for visualization. Although we'll not be able to cover visualization in this particular video, but just to give you a hint, I can probably make a column chart. And in that, I can probably put in the region and the sales value, and I'll get the entire amount of sales value by region. So that was the last part where I showed you how to copy paste the mQuery command inside Power BI Desktop. And you can use Advanced Editor and Blank Query feature to get that job done. So I hope you liked this video in terms of the knowledge that it gives you. It is a super crash course in basics of Power Query and something that you can apply both in Excel as well as Power BI desktop. Of course, the next thing that one needs to learn is around merge queries, join types and append queries, for which I will gladly give the link to the videos in the description section. Do comment and let me know whether this one single video was able to give you a good overview of how Power Query Editor can be used to automate multiple steps. Until then, I'll keep on preparing for new content and keep subscribing and liking the video to encourage me. Thanks, I'm Rishabh.